Harassment is an uncomfortable word, both inside and outside the workplace. But even then, harassment inside the workplace is a poorly understood concept despite the annual harassment sensitization trainings that all of us go through. Why is it poorly understood, and is the workplace really a good filter for any socio-cultural biases or predispositions to harassment that might creep into the workplace? And is it fair to place the onus on HR to actually prevent harassment in the workplace? Let's close the loop on this. Joining me on Close the Loop is Antra Virmani. Antra is the head of people experiences at ThoughtWorks and someone who's worked in this space framing policies against harassment for multiple companies. Antra, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Srini.
So first of all, Antra, the workplace is made up of people who are part of society. And is it fair to expect the workplace suddenly becomes this ideal place where any predispositions and other socio-cultural realities just are left at the door?
I feel that organizations are made by their culture, and it's very important for organization to first become a safe workplace without first introducing all of the policies, which is the culture of transparency,
Right.
so that people can speak.
Okay.
And then coming to the question on harassment, on having policies which help prevent harassment or not tolerate any sort of behavior, is there where we have a structure where we put in harassment, anti-harassment policies,
Correct.
not just posh, but for other genders as well. I feel it's not completely possible to remove all of the socio-cultural biases from a workplace, but we can definitely reduce it. And that sets the tone of the organization.
Right.
Because if you break down, for example, the topic in conversation, posh, the policy itself. Now, the policy itself is for the people, but it's in parts. So there's a framework, right, where you talk about, you want to create awareness, where you talk about what happens if such things happen in the organization, what's the framework,
Right.
where is the decision making involved.
Right.
But what people don't realize is that all of this will happen if at all people feel safe to even express about their colleagues if they are facing harassment.
Right.
So, few cases may directly come to the posh presiding officer or ICC, but we're relying on the entire employees
Yes.
to be responsible, right? And that's the framework.
Right.
And that's where we're expecting that if we create as an organization a culture of transparency, a culture of safe working place, then, all these policies they'll work.
Now, we've all, as employees, been through this, what we was a mandatory posh training, right, as they call it. It's sort of worded in such a way that it's something that you go through. And from whatever I have seen, a lot of people go through the motions of, just going through it. Some people just watch, they don't even watch it, they just take the assessments and so on and so forth. So do you feel like after probably maybe 2 decades of having this mandatorily in most of the tech companies at least, what is the level of understanding of this word harassment? Like, does the average employee across different age groups, different backgrounds, do they understand what harassment means?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Srini, and actually the base question that any organization should start their education or awareness with. And that's where it's mostly done. But yeah, you're right that people can have different interpretation, and sometimes it leads to borderline cases between taking a disciplinary action versus taking it as a case in posh.
Can you differentiate between the two? I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. There is someone who is fresh out of college, is with a mentality of, getting to know people, trying to bond, comes from a very different socio-cultural where, cracking jokes
it's okay.
It's okay. It's perfectly fine. And they enter a common area, which is just taking the lift, and meets someone who is a colleague. They just know by acquaintance, say hello, hi.
Right.
And they just are waiting for the lift to come while he cracks a joke, which is okay for them.
Yeah.
But for the girl who's standing, finds it uncomfortable just because she doesn't know this person so much to get into a space which is comfort.
Right.
And she feels uncomfortable. She goes by, but it's not directed to her. It's a generic joke.
Correct.
After a few days, this person is again trying to bond. This is his attempt to bonding.
So he uses humor to sort of break the
barriers. and then they crack that joke somewhere else where some people laugh, including the girls, while some feel, what's wrong?
Right.
Like, do I pull this guy up in posh? That's a borderline, a tricky
It's a gray
case.
zone.
It's a gray zone.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Somebody as an HR who's onboarded them understands that, hey, this person's jolly. Hey,
Yeah.
this person's, just doesn't mean that way. But, this person is just trying to bond, just
Right.
trying to,
Right.
have fun. But is their definition of a joke is uncomfortable to someone and they're fresh. And you also need to understand certain nuances around it.
Yeah.
This person is fresh out of college,
Sure.
doesn't understand harassment,
Right. Right.
is just trying to be
Yeah.
this person
Yeah.
who wants to be popular. These are very tricky cases. I'll give you an example. It's as good as that if there is a group sitting where there are 4 boys and 1 female sitting. And it may be a joke, which may not be sexual in nature.
Right, right.
It could be any joke.
Right.
But even if boys look at it and all of them, they're just smiling and they're not showing the girl may feel uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes.
And that could come up.
Yeah.
In this case, that it made me. So the girl may keep thinking that it was something about me.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
So yeah, these are the things. And when we discuss about these cases and so on.
So this happens in a focus group setting
Yes.
where people are, you give them
Involved.
scenarios, like
Yes.
let
You
take their
interact.
opinions, you interact.
So then they understand the nuances of it.
Right.
Which I think is more important than actually addressing like, oh,
Right.
this is a mandatory posturing. While that's a compliance, it still needs to be done.
Yes.
But yeah, when you make these topics, you make people comfortable by having these awareness sessions, by having mandatory trainings for people. And the government also says to have sensitization trainings. And this is what a part of it, right? When you have sensitization, then you don't get scared, right? Don't be afraid. Don't just run away.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we want to make people also accountable for it. You are accountable for the workplace
Correct.
that you are a part of. Somebody may be afraid or may feel uncomfortable even reporting it.
Yes.
But if you have a colleague who understands the nuances better than you, they can help you, right?
Do you feel that a lot of cases don't get reported, harassment today?
Not in my purview. I feel if it's not getting reported because a person feels scared, there's always somebody who's helping them that no, this should be, because they must have shared it with a friend.
With a friend or a colleague or somebody.
Most of the time, actually, it reaches to our people champions or talent business partners.
Right. Do you find that the understanding of harassment is different in different age groups of employees? Do you feel there's certain age groups that understand it better and certain age groups that don't?
Yeah, that's when we start with Srini, where we feel that that's the difference. And we've always felt that the younger generation just coming, there are sections to it. There are some people belonging to different socio-cultural backgrounds, may not consider it. The remarks or the conversations they do, they think that it's uncomfortable. But generally speaking, in my experience, I feel that the younger generation, the Gen Z, is much more mature than what the current generation or even when we were back then.
They're much more aware of
Much
the
more
rights and
aware.
all.
They are much more aware of how to make a conversation inclusive. How not to say, like you started with, some words that we could use back then
which you
very
can't.
normally, which we can't. They're very aware of that generally.
Right, right.
Their problems are different. Their challenges may be different. But this aspect,
Right.
they are pretty clear.
Okay. So they're very clear on what they will accept and what they
Yeah,
will not.
yeah. And they're also very, very vocal about voicing their concerns if they feel they're not scared and they don't feel uncomfortable.
Right. So switching tracks to, the role of HR in all of this. Sometimes I feel like HR has been given this, or people think HR has a magic wand, that they wave the wand and suddenly the culture of a company is set up. They wave the wand and suddenly harassment is gone out of the place. Do you feel like HR is unfairly saddled with the sole responsibility of creating a harassment-free workplace? Do you think that other stakeholders need to participate as well and take ownership?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have always believed that the culture comes from the top. When the leadership is talking about the same things that the HR wants to say or is speaking, it has a very different impact.
Right.
And I think it's a responsibility, it's a collective responsibility. It's not the HR has some magic wand. I have seen organization transform into great places to work when the leadership takes the responsibility of a collective
Right.
and empowers the HR
Right.
to build the culture that they feel is right, and have seen the other side as well. HR alone, or anybody, I think, for that matter, cannot just take.
What about the line manager? I mean, we often hear that, whatever policy you frame as an HR, it comes alive to a company comes alive to an employee probably only through the manager, right? In many cases. So, what is the role of the manager here? And the managers are now being asked to be trained on so many things like mental health, sensitization. They have to keep an eye on many other things. Do you think that they are developing an understanding of this? In harassment, and how to look for signs, how to not harass, and things like that.
And here somewhere I feel, no, there is a different way that I think that while manager is your everyday interaction, and it gives you the kind of experience. But I feel when an employee enters the organization, it's very important that employee gets the entire landscape or what the culture of the company looks like and what are the values. It has to come alive in the policies and practices that they live through beyond just manager experience. That could vary, right?
Got it.
Those inherent biases could come. We spoke about unconscious bias, that's there. And we can't take the risk of ruining an employee's experience by just their manager. I might want to train the managers and everything, like you said, it's great. But, still those biases may come. So it's important for an employee to understand that, okay, if I am not happy for XYZ reason, I'm not getting or I'm getting harassed, where do I go?
Right.
It shouldn't be that, okay, this is not good, so I should just go out of the organization.
Correct.
Right. So then the organization doesn't get a chance to take corrective action.
Right.
So it's important for an employee to get an exposure of everything that happens in the organization. What are my values?
Right.
What is this organization? And what are the policies and practices where it reflects? So that they know this is not right.
Got it. And in conclusion, if you have to provide some words of advice to employers first and then employees on how to really create a harassment-free or a minimally harassment-oriented workplace, what would be some of the things like in 2024 that you would want them to do that they've not done before? Both sides of the equation.
Fair. So for an employer, I feel the first and foremost, a culture of trust, empathy, and transparency. It just kind of takes care of a lot of things that the kind of culture you want to create as an organization.
Right.
The better things follow if you just do this. It's very important.
Right.
And deal with people, right? We're dealing with people, not with robots. So there's always exceptions. And always keep room for exceptions. But the way we want to handle it with empathy and care. People centricity at first. Policies are around them to help people. Policies cannot be at the center. Employees are always at the center. And that's how I feel employees should think about it.
Right.
For employees, I feel don't run away from things which are maybe taboo topics in the past. When people voice their concern and then only the organizations come to know that what's going wrong. So I would say while we want to create an anonymous feedback so that people start trusting, but the direction is eventually from getting anonymous to sending your email and say, hey, this is what I want to say. Come have an open conversation.
Yes.
So there are room for people for anonymity, but the direction should be, if you're comfortable, can you share your email? And that shows the next step in trust. So I feel that be open about talking. That's for the employees. And let's all come together to make this workplace a better place to work.
And harassment free.
Harassment free.
Great. Thanks for your inputs, Antra. I think this is an evolving space, obviously, and it's not something which you just define once and just leave it. It has to be evolved, and I think it has to be participative. It can't just be the HR's role. It has to be everyone coming together. But thank you so much for coming on Close the Loop and really sort of giving your point of view on this very important topic.
Thank you, Srini. Loved talking about this. Thank you so much for the time.